All right, so our goal is today to be able to graph a circle from the equation of a circle, and then also, if we are given the information, being able to write the equation of a circle. You may notice that the formula that we start with here is the distance formula. So this formula should be familiar to you. If we take the differences in the x's squared plus the differences of the y coordinate squared, and we square root those, that gives us the distance between 2 points. Well, if we take that, and remember that a circle is all the points that are the same distance, we call that the radius from a point, and we can call that point HK. In other words, the xy is any point that is on the circle that is a distance of the radius from the circle. So therefore, we could take and look at this as instead of distance, or radius, and then if we look at substituting in instead of the x1 and the y1, the center of the circle, the x coordinate of the circle, and the y coordinate of the circle. And so if we look at this, then if we square both sides, we arrive at what we call the standard form of an equation of a circle. So our radius would be r, and the center of our circle would be the coordinates h and k. All right, so the first thing that I want you to do is be able to write the equation of circle if we have actually are just given the radius and the center. So go back and look and see what you wrote down for the equation, the standard form of the equation of a circle, and go ahead and substitute those values into the equation. And here is what we should have came up with. Our radius is 8, and so the radius squared is 64. The h, which is the x coordinate of our circle, is -4. The center of our circle, which is -4. X minus a -4 turns that into x plus 4 squared. Our k value, which is the y coordinate of the center of our circle, is y minus 7 squared. So after we have the radius and the center of the circle identified, then we want to be able to graph the circle. And so we look to 4 points to be able to graph the circle. So if we were talking about from the center of the circle, our point that goes to the right would be the h plus the radius for our x coordinate, and then k will stay the same, our y coordinate of the center of our circle. So that then our point to the left is going to be the our h value minus r, and our k value will stay the same. So as we move to the right and to the left to plot those points from the center of our circle, of course the k value is staying the same. Then as we go from the center of the circle to the top, then we want to make sure that the x value of the center of the circle, which is represented by h, is staying the same, and we are taking the radius and adding it onto the k value, which is the y coordinate of the vertex. And then if we go from the center of the circle and we want to go to the bottommost point, the h value, which is the x coordinate of the circle, will be staying the same. And then we will be taking the radius and subtracting it from the k value, which is the y coordinate of the center of the circle. All right, so example 2. Given the equation here, I want us to identify the center and the radius, and then I want you to think about what those 4 points would be, the one furthest to the right, the one to the left, the one above the center, and the one below the center, and sketch what the graph of that circle would look like. All right, so if we look, when we have x squared, really what we have in there is x minus 0 squared, and when we have y squared, that's y minus 0 squared. And so our center is still at the origin. our radius, when we take the square root of 1, is going to be 1. So if we're starting here at the center of the circle, and we are going to take and add, to go to the right, we're going to add 1 to the x value, and so that's going to be at 1, 0. And then from the center of the circle, we are going to take the 0, which is the x coordinate of the center, and we're going to subtract 1, and that's going to make us go to negative 1, 0. So those are our right and our left points of the circle. And then we're going to look at from the center, working with the y coordinate of the center of the circle. We're going to take and add 1 to it, and that puts us at 0, 1. And then we're going to take and subtract 1 from it, and that puts us at 0, negative 1. All right, so example 2 is very similar. I want you to determine the center of the circle and the radius, then determine the 4 points that will create the circle, and then finally sketch a graph of the circle. All right, so looking at example 2, we can see that that x squared is x minus 0, so the x coordinate of the center is 0. The y coordinate of the center, if we look at it, that k value, we see y minus 3, so our k value is going to be 3. And if we look at the rest of the equation, it was that was equal 4. And then if we take the square root of 4, that is going to give us a radius of 2. And so we're starting from the center of the circle at 0, 3. When we move to the right, we're going to be at 2, 3. When we move to the left, we'll be at negative 2, 3. Keeping the x coordinate of the circle the same, and then moving up, we're going to be at 0, 5, and then down, we're going to be at 0, 1. And then our last one of example 2 here, so part C, ask us to look and find out the center of the circle, the radius, find the 4 points that you need to, and then sketch the graph of the circle. All right, so if we look at the equation, x minus 1 quantity squared will give us the x coordinate of the center to be 1, and then y plus 4 quantity squared will give us the y coordinate of the center of the circle to be negative 4. The square root of 16 gives us the radius of 4. So our center here being at 1, negative 4, we're going to go ahead and move 4 units to the right, which will put us at 5, negative 4. From the center, we will move 4 units to the left, which will put us at negative 3, negative 4. We'll go back to the center. X coordinate will stay the same at 1, and we will move up 4 points, which will put us at 1, 0. The center of the circle, the x coordinate will stay 1, and we will move down 4 units, and that'll put us at 1, negative 8. And I apologize, I clipped that off when I made my slide. All right, so moving on to example 3, we're looking at, well, what happens when you are not given the problem in standard form, and so therefore you cannot identify the center of the circle or the radius. And so what we're going to do is look at this, and I'm going to start by grouping my like terms together. So I'm going to have an x squared and an 8x. That looks like it's going to become one part the x coordinate of the center of the circle, and then this y squared, and then I'm going to move this 7 over to the other side. And now we're going to have to use a process that we haven't done for a while, which is completing the square. So I'm going to take x squared plus 8x. And if you remember about completing the square, think about this being ax squared plus bx If we look at this, we take half of that b term and square it, and that's what we add to both sides. So I'm going to take 8 divided by 2, which is 4, and square it, and I'm going to add 16 here. Now remember, I have to keep the equation balanced, so I have to add 16 to the other side also. Now I'm going to look inside here, and I see that I have a square, which would factor, as we know, 2x plus 4 times x plus 4. So I'm going to rewrite that as x plus 4 quantity squared. Here's my y squared, and then this is 9. And so as I'm looking at to be able to determine my x and y coordinate of the center of my circle, my x coordinate is going to be at -4, my y coordinate is going to be at 0, and then my radius is going to be the square root of 9, which is 3. So if you're wanting a more in-depth explanation of the previous problem, here are the steps written out. You can see that we got to the same conclusion as that I got. The center is at -4, 0, and the radius is at 3. All right, so let's go ahead and try to find the center of the circle and the radius for this particular example. Go ahead and pause, and then when you are ready to see and hear the explanation, go ahead and start the video again. All right, so I'm going to take my x squared term minus 3x, kind of group those together. Then I'm going to take my y squared and 10y term, group those together, and I'm going to move that -1 to the other side. I'm then going to look at this and say, well, if this is -3, half of that is going to be -3/2, and if I square that, that is going to be a positive 9/4. If I factor that, then I know that my square is going to be x minus 3/2 squared. If I go to look at my y, I'm going to, before I do that, I should take and add in my 3/2 to, my 9/4 that I added to this side here, I need to add to this side here. Now I'm going to look at my y, and this is going to be y squared plus 10y. If I take half of 10, divide it by 2, and square it, I'm going to be adding 25 to both sides. So that when I factor this will become my y plus 5 quantity squared. And then once again, if I added 25 to this side, I have to add 25 to that side. So my next thing is I'm going to have to take and add the 1, the 9/4, and the 25. And when I do that by making a common denominator of 4, I'm going to end up with 113/4. And so now I can look at this and say that here's the x-coordinate of my vertex, and that is going to be at 3/2. Sorry, the x-coordinate of the center of my circle. And the y-coordinate at the center of my circle is going to be -5. So that is my h and my k. And that when I go to look at my radius is going to be the square root of 113/4. 4 is a perfect square. 113 is not and does not have any perfect square factors. And so the radius is going to be the square root of 113/2. I need to take the square root of that 4 and make it 2. Okay, so once again, here is a little bit more detailed version of how I got my answer to the last question. So if you want to review it in a little bit more detail, these are the steps that I just talked through. All right, so here we have some practice problems. We did 3 examples. So problems 1 and 2 here go with example 1. Problems 3, 4, and 5 go with example 2. Problems 6, 7, and 8 go with example 3. So I want you to take some time, stop the video, complete those, and when you are finished, you can check your answers by continuing on. All right, here are the answers to the 8 problems that you just tried. One that I do want to make note of is number 8. When we went to do complete the square, we could find that we were able to almost get it into the format for the center for the standard form for an equation of a circle. But here we have a -4, and we know that if we have a negative number there, that this is not the equation of a circle. At this point, you're finished and ready to move on to the next thing.